So good day, everybody, and thanks for joining us. This is a follow-up training that Bhavana provided for Powered by People Makers in August. Then the topic was costing and pricing your products for the US market. And through our discussion session in that training in August, there was a request for an actual calculator or a tool, basically, to be created that PBP makers could use to help calculate their costs more effectively, or have a tool that can help you to input your costs. And then including like your trims and your shipping, et cetera, your labor, and then a way to actually work at margin and being able to know what margin percentage you could take and start to have a tool that allows you to, quote unquote, play with that a little bit, so that your prices can be most competitive in the market, but that you can also be sure that you're correctly accounting for all your costs, and then also able to, because of that, secure your margins and your markup percentages. So I'm just going to share my screen very briefly, just to walk us through a couple highlights from that training, just as a refresher. And then we're going to jump right into the calculator. I should say this is kind of a proof of concept. So the calculator has been reviewed with PBP. We have made some adjustments through that exercise, but obviously this is your tool. So we want you to be able to use it and make suggestions on how to improve it. The way to do that is, as you're working with this calculator, to give your feedback back to your account manager. That is the most kind of efficient way to get your feedback back to us, so that we can then make adjustments with the account manager so that the tool is really useful for you as a PBP maker on the platform. So without further ado, I am going to begin to share the PowerPoint. And I'm going to take myself off here. Okay. So again, pricing and costing for the US market for the Powered by People calculator. Maybe just a minute about who we are. We are Bhavana World Project. I am the CEO, and Christopher Kimmel is the CFO. This project came from a USAID program to help train makers, particularly on the continent of Africa, to be able to access US markets more efficiently. And then this training was about education about costing and understanding the market. We've been working with USAID for more than 15 years on training and market linkages in Southeast Asia. And so we are now doing the follow-up to present the calculator to you. Maria, I'm going to wait for one moment, if you don't mind, and just walk through this and then take your question. Thank you. So when pricing a product, there are varying factors to determine a price. And one is, what is your objective in that foreign market? Do you have an existing relationship? Are you trying to break into a new market? And what are you trying to accomplish? Is there a particular outlet or model that you want to try to achieve, or a particular set of a type of outlet that you're looking for? But understanding what your objective is helps you tremendously to kind of set up the parameters of how to achieve it. To do that, you want to evaluate the market and the competition. You want to know who your competition is in that market and what their pricing looks like. And that's for handmade products, and also products that might not be handmade but look handmade. I say that because you just want to have a realistic understanding of the market that you're competing in. So really checking out your competition is an important step to pricing your product appropriately for the market you're trying to enter. Consider modifying your products. If you see that your products are coming in too high, certainly you could look at taking less margin to attract new customers in that new market. But you could also look to modify your product to be able to help you attain that market entry point or that price point, but also be able to sell the product effectively or affordably. So you'll see in the tool that there's opportunity to do this as you're using the calculator. We want to make sure we include the non-market costs, such as custom fees, tariffs, taxes, and this will cover in our overhead area of the calculator. We want to exclude costs that provide no benefit to the export function. That would be things like domestic advertising or things that you're doing in your local market. You don't want to encumber that price with those activities because that could then raise your price. You want to compute the actual cost of the exported product. And so we hope the calculator will help you to really know your actual costs and keep track of that and be able to see after an order is complete, how closely were my costs that I calculated, how closely did it come in and did it erode my margin? And then, of course, you want to compute the final cost to the consumer. So these are all varying activities that happen in understanding how to price appropriately. The calculator handles a majority of this, so I wanted to do an overview with you. These were the strategies that we shared last time for price determination in the U.S. market. We've talked about market demand and competition, knowing who the consumer is. The cost calculator really helps you in the area of pricing techniques and costs, and then reevaluating price. So you'll see how that works, but it really identifies those last three strategies for developing a price strategy. And then I just share this with as a point of reference. The break-even point is where you have covered your cost based on your total units, your total sales, and then anything over that break-even point becomes your profit. And within that profit, you will cover your variable and fixed costs. The closer you are to knowing what your break-even point is, the easier it is to not erode into your profit margin. So knowing your break-even point, which this calculator will do, will help you to maintain the profit margin that you're trying to achieve, and hopefully that doesn't erode too much through the process of delivering that order. This is our goal. Our goal is to know our break-even and to build a profit structure that maximizes your profit, but does not take you out of the market and not be competitive based on price. And so the last thing I'll say very briefly is what the goal of the calculator is. And so we wanted to create a flexible tool that can assist powered by people makers to input cost of products under cost of goods. And this is the material inputs or the bill of materials, including your labor, packaging, and marketing materials. We also wanted to include in the calculator a way to calculate your overhead and apply it on a per style, per order basis. So Chris will take us through how to calculate general overhead, and you'll see how the calculator moves it into the worksheet as a factor in your break-even to calculate your break-even point. You want to calculate your margins based on your business targets. So you may have a target margin that you're interested in achieving. Maybe that's a 55% margin, but that might not, that margin may be optimal for your business, but it might not be optimal for the retailer. So we also give you the ability to recalculate the margin based on the MSRP to attain your final wholesale price. And then finally, the ability to calculate for multiple styles. So you'll see that the calculator lets you input multiple styles into the calculator. So you have various, you have ways to calculate more than one style in your collection. Again, as you work with the calculator, reach out to your account manager with questions. Your feedback is critically important. This is your tool. Provide feedback to the account manager so that your suggestions can be included in improvement. Sorry. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing this. And I think we had one question that came in. Oh dear, I didn't do it at full size, Aaron. I'm sorry about that. You are absolutely right. I apologize. You will have this presentation up on the PPP site, and so you can review it at your leisure. But thank you for that. That was a very good comment I should have taken earlier than now. So what I'm going to do is, if it's okay with everyone, I'd like to just go right into the calculator. So let me see. Here it is. Let me share this. Okay. Can you, let me make sure that I'm sharing that. Sorry about that. Just have to do this one more time.
Do you want me to share my screen?
Sure, because you actually did want to do some setup. So let me, Chris, I don't know. Can you share without me making you the host?
You have to allow me to, I'm pretty sure.
Okay,
Hang on.
I'm with you. Sorry, everyone. Thanks for your patience. Chat promote pen.
You might just want to make me host then.
I'm not sure. Okay, you should be able to share now, Chris.
Let's take a look.
Thanks, everyone, for your patience.
I do apologize. Yeah,
Lene, another alternative is I'm texting the link to the calculator on Google Sheets in case you wanted to just open that quickly.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you.
Chat box.
Yeah, the link is definitely in the chat.
Okay, let me do that.
That will prompt you to open it and make a copy. And that will be the same copy that all of the attendees on this call also have access to.
Excellent. Thank you. Usually don't have this kind of trouble. Let's see what's going on here.
If you go to members, can you switch me over to host?
Just one moment.
In the meantime, I'll just do a little housekeeping for all of the people who are joining this call.
Thank
My
you,
name's
Annie.
And I am working with Deanna and the sourcing and impact team at Powered by People to produce educational content and sort of business development tools for your, support your business growth. And so I just wanted to remind everyone that once you log into your Maker portal, within your dashboard, there is on the left-hand side, sort of towards the bottom of your Maker portal, a link that says resources. If you go into your portal and click that link that says resources, it will populate and pop out what we're calling our learning universe, or our learning platform, where you can find the original pricing seminar that Lene referred to at the start of this call. And you can watch that full recording. It's an hour, but we've also time-stamped it. So you can skip over to sections that you're most interested in learning about, relating to, pricing your product in the spirit of making it most competitive to the market that you're entering. And you will also find many of the PowerPoint presentations that Lene has walked through over the past few months in our work together, saved as a PDF and downloadable and available to you. So I encourage everyone to go check out the resource page and have a look. And that is going to be regularly updated over the next few weeks. So we should have about 8 new learning modules on that platform by end of this year, and more to come next year. And if you have any questions, as Lene mentioned, please reach out to your regional sourcing and impact directors. So that would be Sabrina, Diana, Kimani, and Karasha, who I know you are all well acquainted with at this point. So thank you for, and you can also email me with any questions, and I'll pop my email into the chat for you all. Okay, Lene, back to you.
Thanks, Annie. Chris and I are just getting our ducks in order here and really apologizing for our, here we go. There we go. Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, and is it in maximum size that the screen share is easy to see?
I would maybe go up to the upper left corner and click the plus button, upper left, and just maximize the Excel.
Yes, of course.
The green, yeah. There you go. Yep.
I know how to do that. Is that better?
Always more intense when you're on a Zoom call.
True. When 25 people are waiting for me, I tend to not, my fingers and my mouth don't work as well together. So thanks everybody for your patience. I think you can now see the calculator. And so we're just going to walk through the instructions on this. Let me just share with you, first of all, that there are written instructions for each input section here in your first tab. So we'll pretty much just walk through this as a tutorial, but you can always reference back to this as a general instruction and general overview of how to use the calculator. But I think the most important thing is to just walk through it together. So starting at the top, you can input your season and your style number and your style description. Within that, you can change your units based on the order that you may have in hand. So we're doing this calculation on 500 units of a cross-stitch cotton pillow. And this is an image of that pillow here on the right. And you want to fill in this information because this factor here, this 500 units, is how the units are, is the number that the calculator is based on. So you can then go back and change this and see how your margins change if your order sizes are smaller or higher. So let's just start with section 1, which is your bill of materials.
Lene, can I interrupt for a sec?
Yes, of course. Thank you.
Just click on style 1, the next tab over, just to show the blank sheet as well? There you,
Okay. All right.
yeah.
Thank you.
So
Here, yep.
in the when you're working starting with a new sheet, obviously the bolded things in brackets are information that you will be inputting. Season, style, number of units to start off with,
Mm,
and you definitely want to hit those first. Sorry to interrupt. Feel free to go back to the costing sheet. This
yeah.
example.
Thank you. No, it's a very important point. Thank you. Um, so then we will, in section 1, we will start to add our bill of materials. So in this case, we have our indigo textile base cloth. That is $20 per unit. So that unit could be a meter, it could be a yard, it could be a piece. But the total calculation is $20. And for our pillow cover, we are using 0.25 of that unit. So in this case, let's just say it's $20 a meter. And for that unit, we're using 0.25 consumption, which is 5% in cost.
Oh, $5.
$5, excuse me. Thank you. I should definitely let the financial guy do this. I'm going to hand over soon. So the cotton drill textile, that's the back of the fabric. So we're only going to use the hand loom fabric on the front side of the cover. That's a much lower cost. We're still using 0.25. And so our cost for that trim is 81 cents. Then there's a section to add your trims and notions. So in this case, we have in cotton embroidery thread, we have a zipper, we have the pillow insert itself, we have the main label and the care label. Certainly this can continue. You may have a variety of additional trims to add, but here is where you can calculate your total cost. So the unit cost for your embroidery thread is maybe 24 cents of spool. You're using a fifth, 5 units worth of that, or a fifth, or a 5 of those, excuse me, 5 for 5 colors. And so that's $1.20 in your embroidery thread. You're using 1 zipper, so that calculates at $2.50. Your pillow insert is $3.50. You're using 1, that's $3.50. Your main label is 10 cents a piece, as well as your care label that carries over when you add the 1 or you put the 1 unit in there. Okay. And then last is your packaging, which includes your hang tag, your poly bag, your box, and possibly your marketing inserts if you have that. And so again, here's your price per unit. Here's how many units you're using. Here's the actual cost. And so this then becomes your bill of material subtotal cost for your inputs in that section 1. From there, we add our labor costs into the product. And so that can be calculated, and we have this here in our note. You can either enter, if you're working on a piece rate basis, you can enter your piece rate directly into your unit cost. If you are calculating or doing a time study, you can also use these columns to input your cost per hour that will then can calculate how much time it is taking to do the cutting and sewing. So either way, you can bypass this hourly rate calculation and just add your piece rate costs, or you can also work with you can also do a calculation from your hourly wage to be able to have a individual labor cost per unit.
And can I interrupt again?
Yes.
If you were doing hourly wages, for instance, in this one for the cutting and sewing, you have cost is $20 per hour. Well, that could be 4 people earning $5 an hour for this particular part of the job. And that those 4 people can produce 10 units an hour. I don't know that. I mean, this is The numbers are fairly loose here, but the idea is it doesn't have to be one person who's cutting and sewing. You can, if you've got 10 people doing it, you add up, put all of their labor amount into that thing, and then divide it up by the number of units that are being created by that total number of people.
Thanks for that clarification.
Yeah.
And so now you have your total labor, you have your total cost of raw material. And now we're going to move into section 3, which is your overhead cost calculator. And I'm going to hand it over to Chris to help us understand what this overhead is calculating and how to use this little scratch pad here on the right-hand side to help you calculate that.
I'm going to have to hold your. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so obviously any business has fixed costs and then variable costs for the item that's being produced. So this side over here is kind of like a scratch pad where you look at your own business and the monthly fixed fees that you're paying, because if you are manufacturing on your own property or you're renting a property, you obviously have rent, you have utilities. So you want to include those in your costing. So this scratch sheet right here, this manufacturer pays $800 a month in rent. They have $200 worth of utilities that they use. So they're going to pop this in first. They say, okay, the period that I'm going to be manufacturing, I figure it's going to take 2 weeks to do this. So this number right here, there's actually a formula. They're saying, okay, we're doing 2 out of the 4 weeks. So obviously that's 0.5 or 1/2. And so they're saying, okay, for this monthly fixed fee, I'm going to be using 2 weeks of it to manufacture my goods. In my facility, I'm not just making a pillow, I'm also making maybe 2 different kinds of pillows, or maybe I've got 4 SKUs that I'm working on, but I figure a quarter of my facility I'm using on this thing. So that's where these numbers come from. And they ultimately say, okay, so for this pillow order that I'm doing, I have my fixed $800, I have my fixed $200. Half of that is going to be going to the order, and or half the time is going to be going to the order, and I'm going to be using about 1/4 of the facility to do this. Now, you may not have to worry about any of this, especially if you are a jobber who has someone doing piece goods on their own facility. But this is just a scratch pad calculator to get an idea of how this works. So in this order that we're talking about, the 500 pillows, they're going to assume that $100 of their rent is going to be going towards that, and $25 of their utilities is going to be going towards that order. Of course, there's also management costs, and this is one of the places where margin changes around quite a bit. A lot of manufacturers, when they're first starting out, they forget that they have to include their own pay in the costing of the goods that they're manufacturing. It's very easy to say, well, I'm going to be making a profit and that's going to be my pay, but it doesn't really work that way. It's much better to include your own pay in the cost, and not only your own pay, but if there are 4 of you working in the office or whatever, you need to say, well, they're all getting paid too. So in this case, this management cost is $1,600 a month, and again, they're saying for 2 weeks, which is half of that month, we're going to be manufacturing this order, and that's going to take 25% of their time. That's going to work down to $200 of this order is going to be going towards my management costs. So that gives us an overhead total. And then that gets divided by the number of units, which takes us down to 65 cents per unit. And that number there carries over automatically to this spot here. So obviously, if we were to change this to say 60, what if it ended up being $60, that changes all of the numbers here. So just something to keep your eye on as you're working. The scratch pad, the bottom line numbers are the ones that will ultimately carry over here. So you don't need to transfer them. Shipping, we're not going to go too much into shipping, or I'm not going to go too much into shipping. You just have to be aware if you are moving your goods to a port or an airport on a truck, you need to include the cost of that. So you want to be thinking to yourself as you're costing, okay, I'm going to be moving this many boxes in a truck, and it's going to cost me this amount of money. Well, where do you get this number? You call up your local trucker or your whoever is moving your goods to a port, and you say, hey, how much would it cost? The volume and weight order for shipping is simply something for you to think about. Most of the time, if you are moving goods by truck, they're going to want to, or by air for that matter, they're going to want to know what the volume of your order is, and they're going to want to know what its weight is going to be. And then for costing, these are approximate numbers. You don't know for sure, but it's something you want to think about and get as accurate as possible. So again, you will calculate something, and ultimately your shipping number is going to get divided by the number of goods, and it's going to give us, in this case, 70 cents per unit just to move the thing to the airport. Now, the international shipping is a PBP thing that you have worked out with them. So I didn't go into that too much, but we can certainly make changes on this as you're working with it. If you feel, hey, we could have a little bit of extra help on this thing, and I'm happy to work with you on that. We tossed in in our overhead costs, we cost in a commissions. If you're paying a salesman or something like that, there's a certain commission that you have to include in the idea of your cost. So this is a number you're going to want to enter. I just put in 15%. It could be 10%, but this calculates off of the previous costs of the goods, and just gives you a 15% number of that. So ultimately, that takes us our total overhead of $7.89 and gives us a final total. We can assume this is what it's going to cost to manufacture this pillow or whatever you're making. Once you have this number, this is where we actually start the process of really costing an item. And this is where the art comes in as much as the science. So,
Chris, sorry,
yeah,
Chris.
go right ahead.
This is Annie from Powered by People. I just wanted to jump in on the line 45 commission per unit. Just wanted to make note that this is for any sort of sales agent, showroom, commission structure. And so at Powered by People, there's a 15% sales commission embedded into the process of transacting on the Powered by People site, as you all know. So we've included that 15% here, so you can start factoring it in to your overhead. So just wanted to point out that the reason we put 15% in here is that it's tied to the PBP rate, but the general principle that we spoke about in prepping this calculator is that you always want to factor in any sort of commission structure should you be building out products to be sold through any kind of a sales agent in the future as well.
When I was thank you, Annie. Yeah. When I was manufacturing, this could range anywhere from 10 to 25%, and depending on where I was selling, what the market was, and so you have to definitely have a feel for that before your final costing is done. When I was doing 25% commissions, that was an inordinate amount of money, but so you want to keep that in your head. And again, this might not be, in fact, it definitely is not completely accurate in the end. It's just a pretty general amount in order to get to your cost. And that's the goal here, is to get to a final cost. So we've got this total cost of goods at $26.37. What the calculator now does is it says, okay, I need to cost this thing. So we start with saying, okay, we'll need a profit margin, and 55% is always a good starting point. So I just left it in there. And in fact, I think if you look at the blank sheets, you'll see that that's what's the default value. And certainly you can change that around, but there's no real reason to. The real costing comes below. But what that's telling us is we need to get that profit margin. We're going to be setting our wholesale price at $58.59. So the question always is, well, why don't you just make the wholesale cost $58.59? And this is where your market research has to come into play. And I encourage everyone to spend as much time shopping at the beginning as you do actually costing, because you want to know what is the market looking like, and also what market are you hoping to sell to. If you're selling to Rodeo Drive in Los Angeles, California, your prices are going to be higher. And that's something that ultimately you're going to be playing around with. And that's what this portion is about. So we have $58.59. And if we put that in here, $58.59, as you can see, that takes your manufactured retail price up to $128.90. And that's assuming that the retailer is going to be doing marking the thing up 2.2 or a 55% margin, just like you did. But as you're shopping, you might say, well, I have never seen a pillow that goes for $128. The nicest pillows I see, maybe they go for $110. And you think, well, that would be probably the market value I'd like to go to. So that's where you start to play with your price a little bit. And you say, well, wait a minute, what if I only charged $50 for this pillow? That brings your profit margin down to 47%, which is still pretty healthy profit margin. And that's going to then say, okay, I can expect my retailer to be charging $110 for this thing, and I see plenty of high-end pillows on the market for that, so that's a good thing. You might say, well, I'd like to sell this pillow for under $100. So then you have to say, well, let's see, if I'm selling it for 45, do I hit that market? And the answer is yes. That takes me down to 99 as a retail cost, and that's pretty good. Now, you could say, well, wait a minute, I've cut my profit margin to 41.41%. Well, is that acceptable to your business? Is it not? You're still making a profit here. And that's what you're looking for, assuming you're going to be selling about 500 of these things. Obviously, if you don't, then it's going to reduce your ultimate profit, which you don't want. But again, this is just a calculator. This is just taking a look at what you have and your goals. And ultimately, you can decide, do I need to change this around? This is what all manufacturers and retailers do, is they say, okay, I've got goods, they need to move. Maybe they come, you're looking at this thing and you're looking at the market and you're saying, well, wait a minute, this is a really high-end pillow and I'm low. You might want to say, okay, I'm going up to $60 on this thing. And that is where you, as the person who's putting this thing out to market, has a better chance of saying, okay, I am well within the market for this item. Do you want to add anything to that, Lene or Annie? Do you have any comments on that?
That was great. We do have a question here. So Pitate asks, the price that we should display in our Powered by People store, is it the MSRP or the wholesale price? So there are, and Deanna, who is also on this call, who is one of our sourcing and impact leads at Powered by People, can definitely jump in to answer this, as can your regional contact. But I would say that we are including on your list for each product that you list on your Powered by People Maker page, you list out your wholesale price, and then you also include what you are suggesting as your retail price. So you're including both. I hope that answers that question. And for kind of any detailed questions around Powered by People's position on including both the wholesale and MSRP or suggested retail price, we are happy to also take the conversations offline and speak to you more directly about your specific questions. But I think this, Chris, that was a really helpful and really great explanation.
Good.
Yeah.
So we have about 15 minutes that we can open the floor to questions. And we can also do more, as Chris was kind of working with some of the inputs, we can also do more examples of changing numbers or kind of working together through how things change when you change certain cells. So I'm going to open the floor. Everybody should have a live mic. Let me just make sure there's a few folks who've come in later. So I want to just give you all access to your microphones. Also, you can feel free to put questions in the chat. But the floor is yours to ask questions and allow us to help you use this as effectively as possible.
Lene, I have a question. Annie from PBP again.
Hi,
So I know, Chris, that you've embedded a bunch of brilliant calculations into this calculator. And these are all tied to, if we scroll to the top of the calculator, the anticipated units on order, which is 500 units for this pillow. Could we scroll up? Yeah. So in the past, so just to give a little bit of background for all those who are on the call, I too have been an artisan manufacturer and have run and built 2 different artisan businesses. And in my experience, sometimes we were not manufacturing or producing until we actually had purchase orders in hand. So we worked on a made-to-order model. So in that scenario where we don't know what the units on order will be, so we don't know if we're getting 500 units or 200 units of this pillow, as an exercise, should manufacturers think about using this box here, C5, the unit box, to establish their minimum opening quantity, so their MOQ.
Yes.
If I'm bringing my product to market, this pillow, and I don't know how many orders I'm getting, but I do need to establish a price to bring it to the wholesale market, should I say the minimum quantity of units we need ordered across all of our retailers or all of our accounts will be 500. So just, if you guys could speak to MOQ and kind of how that factors in for makers who are not producing inventory unless they receive orders.
Yes, absolutely. And a very good question. So really, this calculator can help you to establish what your MOQ should be, so that you are profitable at that MOQ number. So let's say 500 is a high MOQ. Let's say you wanted to reduce that to 120 or 150, which is sometimes a relatively common opening MOQ. You can then calculate all of those costs and see your margin and your margin percentage based on those smaller volume. And so everything will shrink a little bit, including how much your overhead calculations will be, obviously your costs for materials, etc. But yes, you should begin the exercise with your MOQ to make sure that your MOQ amount, when put through the calculator, allows you to be profitable when you're producing less units. Very good question.
Thank you. And we do have a few questions that are coming in through the chat, so I can go ahead and read those, Lene, if that's easiest.
That would be great.
Okay, so we have a question from someone who just wants a little bit more clarification on the MSRP.
Yes.
So I think, if we could speak a little bit more about how do we get from our internal wholesale price to the MSRP and what assumptions we're making about the MSRP. So Jenny asks, how do I know how much the customer, so the customer would be the retailer, is going to spend, for example, on shipping, marketing, fixed costs? How do I know they have a margin based on the MSRP? So I think in this case, the wholesale that is being workshopped through this calculator is as a maker business, our wholesale for our product. The MSRP is what the retailer would price and sell this product for their customers. And I'm just, Lene, if you could kind of speak to that transition from wholesale to retail price.
Sure. So it's a very good question. So this is where I think Chris said it well. This is where it goes from kind of being a science to more of an art. So very simply, you could take your actual wholesale cost here in this example at $60 and add 55% as the minimum markup that a retailer would expect. You can see here, retailers will expect 55 to 70% IMU. And you can just take your wholesale and put it in and get your retail. But this is where your market research becomes important, because $132 for this product may be priced out or too high for the retailer to bear that cost. And this is where you're going to do and ultimately the end consumer, this is where you're going to do your market research and say, okay, I have a handmade pillow that's indigo that has hand stitched embroidery on it. It's this, dimension. I'm going to look at other handmade products from other parts of the world on other platforms and see what suggested retail price, what is the price with the appetite of that product. Maybe it's not 132, maybe it's 100 or 99. And so this is where you have the opportunity to make not just mark up your enter all your costs, have them all entered accurately, and have a very accurate cost of goods. You then have the opportunity to work on what margins your product can maintain or can have to be able to be competitive in the retail space, to be able to be competitive to the consumer and not overpriced so you don't do any sales at all. So the important part of understanding the MSRP is really this second part of the calculator gives you the opportunity to change your to reduce in some cases or increase in some cases your wholesale costs, see what your margin percentage is, and see how that impacts, how does that positively impact your competitiveness for the retail price on a product like this. Is that helpful? Jenny, does that answer your question? Oh, fantastic. Thank you for the question. It's a really good one. And so, and so the other thing that this speaks to is you have to think of the complete life cycle of the product through to the consumer. And so that's what this second part of the calculator allows you to do, is to consider the retail cost, not just your selling price. Jenny's microphone's not working. Let me just check here, Jenny. I'll see if I can make sure you're.
We have another question from Habanuba Arts saying, thank you for this extremely useful session. They're wondering where taxes will be calculated if we are selling in the US.
So Yeah, so there's more than one tax that we can consider. One would be any domestic taxes that have to be added into your product would go into your overhead costs. So that probably is a line we could add to the overhead calculator to the left. And Jenny, you should be able to speak now. I just wanted to tell you that. And then the import costs, the cost for your duties and taxes, that will come out of the landed cost, and that is part of PBP's cost to the maker as the seller on the platform. So basically, for your purposes, you want to add any of your local taxes and your local clearance costs to get goods out of the country, and then any inbound tax on the market side is handled by PBP.
Lene, I will have to verify if that is accurate with our shipping logistics team, but I know that Deanna can also maybe hop in and elaborate further with respect to taxes. But I just wanted to sort of reiterate that this worksheet that we've walked through is really kind of like, back of the envelope scratch sheet that you can use to kind of just arrive at the basics. And of course, like every single person's product will be unique and will have other inputs to consider. So I also welcome feedback from all who have participated. You can email me directly. I'll pop my email back into this webinar chat if there are, changes to this calculator we should make as we bring it live to the resource section of your Maker portal. We have a few more questions, and I know we're kind of running out of time, so we have about 3 more minutes. I just wanted to check with you, Lene, if we have any Q&A questions that have been popped into the Q&A chat, which I am unable to see on my end.
No, it seems like everyone is using the chat function, not the Q&A function.
Okay, so we have a question on calculating MOV or MOQ. Could you make an example? For example, the average price of our products are $50 wholesale. I would love to invite this maker to unmute and maybe elaborate a little bit on this question so we can do our best to answer it for you. So this is, I'm so sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, but Aketike.
Hello, this is Nana from Aketekete.
Hi, great.
Yeah, so I'm trying to understand how we could set a minimum order value for our wholesale orders. We were thinking if it's something that we get to decide on our own, or something or a decision we should be making based on these calculations. So, for instance, if the average price of our products are around $50, what would be the most reasonable minimum order value for wholesale orders to probably ensure that we are making enough profit for each order?
So how do you actually set your MOV is the question.
We have currently just set it at $500 per wholesale order to have a reasonable, yeah.
Okay. Well, what you would do is, what I would recommend you do is put the 50 unit minimum or the $500 unit minimum. So this works better to have a unit basis.
It's 9 o'clock.
Excuse me, for your so MOQ, so the quantity versus the value. Of course, you can calculate your quantities and then provide a value. But my suggestion would be to really use the calculator. And if your value is 500 and your average price per order and your average price per unit is 50, then that's 10 units. And so use the 10 units and see how what your margin actually looks like. It may be that that's not enough units to really have the margin percentage yield enough dollars that activates as a margin. What's good about this calculator is because you're adding overhead in before you're marking it up, you do have those costs covered. But the question is on a 10 unit order, are you making enough money? And if the answer is no, then you would want to increase the MOV. If MOV is how you quote to your clients, and use the MOQ, the quantity, as your way to determine if you're making enough money. Does that answer the question?
Yes, I believe that is very, very useful and very helpful. Thank you very much.
You're most welcome.
All right, so we are at time, and I just wanted to take a moment to thank Lene and Chris so much, emphatically, from PVP for your time and energy on this, and for your wisdom and your years of experience in guiding us in sort of the best practices for pricing, pricing on cost of goods, labor, overhead, and thinking through how to also add in that sales agent fee. And I just wanted to let everyone here know that as a follow-up, we will be bringing this calculator live to the resource page in the next week or two. And I'm also going to drop the link again into this chat. So for those of you who joined a little late and you can't scroll up to see the link, I will share it again. So this is the link to the Google Sheet, which will prompt you to make a copy for yourself. And some of these concepts that we talked about might feel abstract still. So I think once you start to plug in your actual numbers, like maybe take, a very simple product in your repertoire, in your assortment, and plug it into this calculator and do a little bit of workshopping.